Hey guys, how you doing? Alex coming at you once again from my backyard here in Southern California. Off work, enjoying a little Cabernet. Just figured I'd come on and show a few more records I've been enjoying over the last week or so. Combination, yeah, most of these I've had for several weeks, some of them a few months. So start off, continue with yesterday's theme with the jazz stuff. This is a reissue, came out a few months ago. It's called Opium by Opium for Friends, and it's sorry, I don't have the insert in front of me, so I'm gonna kind of read a little bit from my laptop here. But it's Franz Kolgman and Bill Dixon. It's called Opium for Friends. It's originally from 1977. It was released on Franz Kolgman's own small label out of Austria. Kolgman is a saxophone and flugelhorn player. Recorded a handful of records in the late 70s, and this is the only one that I've actually heard. I think a couple of the other ones have been reissued as well recently. This is fantastic, and it also features Steve Lacy on a few tracks, and there's Alan Silva on bass on a few tracks, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. There's a guy called Gerd Greer, who's they just list him as playing the computer, and of course, this being 1977, it certainly sounds what you would imagine a computer would sound like in 1977. That's on the second side, but yeah, really fantastic playing on the trumpet from Dixon here. Really cool sounds coming from Kolgman on the flugelhorn. There's a bunch of other players that come in and out of different tracks. Lacy, of course, another standout on two of the tracks on side B. Really neat reissue. Originally in a very small label. Definitely check it out. It's a European-only reissue, so it's not super easy to find in the States. But yeah, if you ever come across this, definitely check it out. Fantastic artwork, and the insert, which I could not find somewhere in the house, features an incredible photo of Kolgman and Dixon, with Dixon sporting a bandana and basically looking like he's in a motorcycle gang, which is fantastic, and I'm probably going to frame. Next one, so Kieran showed this recently. I don't think I've seen anyone else show this, unfortunately, because only 400 of these were pressed. This came out in 2018. This is saxophone player Muriel Grossman, The Golden Rule, on RR Gems Records. On this guy, it says it's out of Estonia. I don't know if the label's based out of there or if that's the pressing plant. So Muriel is a French woman, and she is now based out of Ibiza, Spain. It's a quartet with Radomir Milokovic on guitar, Gina Schwartz on bass, and Uros Stamenovic on drums. And this is it's a very overt tribute, essentially, to John Coltrane. And it's amazing. It's almost like she was not at all intimidated by the daunting specter of Coltrane when she recorded this, and it really shines through. I mean, you can tell that she's not imitating. She's not doing anything else but being, inspired and drawing from, the canon of Coltrane's work in its entirety. And the whole group is extremely tight, and all of these guys, the guitar playing is incredible as well. I'm almost certain that Coltrane never recorded anything, with an electric guitar ensemble. This basically answers kind of what that would have sounded like. And even the track titles, they don't shy away from being obvious. One of them is called on side 3, the double LP. Side 3 is a side-long track called Training In. Side 4, the track just called Train. So yeah, this is a modal modern jazz at its absolute finest. Muriel, she does play the soprano and the tenor, like Coltrane. So, oh, and the other story. So as you can tell, this cover got destroyed during our winter rains. This must have I think the package basically got soaked somewhere in the post office. So when I got it, it was pretty much, the cover was completely saturated. Took me days to dry it out. I did the best I could. You kind of see some of the water damage there, but so when I posted this on Instagram, the record label noticed, and they actually offered to send me a brand new sleeve, which actually arrived today. So yeah, incredible customer service, from these guys. I should also note that the packaging on this is fantastic. It's pretty much like an impulse style, super thick, gatefold, really nice liner notes, and the pressing is absolutely impeccable. Thankfully, the records were not damaged by the moisture. Once I cleaned them up, they sound fantastic. So I believe it sounds like they're gonna repress this next year. Only 400 were pressed, like I said before, and it sounds like she might be coming out with something new maybe this year. Unfortunately, she has not toured outside of Europe so far, but I definitely hope she plays in the US at some point. Shifting gears to some electronic stuff, I was revisiting this one, Rodelius Self-Portrait on the Sky label from 1979. Don't recall, Rodelius had several solo records on the Sky label in the late 70s through the early 80s. I don't recall exactly where this one falls in the discography. Though it appears like this one was recorded maybe from a period from like 77, 73 to 77. Liner notes are in German, so don't quote me on that. But you can definitely hear a lot of the harmonia type, a lot of those flavors. But I think this is a lot more meditative overall. I would almost call this new age music with a motoric beat, if you will. A lot of the tracks do retain that motoric drive, but at the same time are a lot more maybe introspective than some of his other work with Mobius. A fantastic record that doesn't necessarily coalesce as some of his group work does, but it's nonetheless very interesting, and you can definitely see him kind of experimenting. There's a lot of tracks here. There's 11 tracks. Most of them are under 4 minutes, so a lot of them are just a little sketches of pieces, and yeah, I think overall it's a very interesting record, and I love that artwork. I believe there's a volume 2 of this, which I would like to get sometime. Moving on to some modern electronic music. This is Keith Fullerton Whitman. The record is called Disingenuity / Disingenuousness. This is, I believe, from something like 2007 or 8. Oh, no, 2010. This is on the Pan label out of I think Berlin, definitely in Germany. So it's got a really cool outer sleeve here. So Keith Fullerton Whitman, he's a really interesting electronic artist, and he mostly works with analog synths and other analog devices. So I think he really, I think, sets himself apart from a lot of current electronic musicians. Not only because he's using analog sounds, but because he's clearly an extremely smart and well-versed musician, and interested in a very wide variety of different sounds and music theory. The B-side of this very much sounds like a lot of the French composers from the GRM school, like Francois Bale, for example. You can definitely hear that, especially on side B. Side A is just absolutely fantastic with analog, sequencers that he uses. It's hard to describe. I may try to leave a link to it if I can find it on YouTube. At times it reminds me of Baroque organ music, and this is all on like analog synths, but it's definitely sort of programmed, so there's a organic feel to it, but it's at the same time very electronic. It's an amazing record, and most of his records are definitely worth checking out, and most of them are quite cheap, both on CD and LP. This one in particular was pretty hard to find about 5-6 years ago, but it seems like prices have come down quite a bit. Other thing is this Pan label out of Germany. Everything is meticulously mastered by this guy Richard Becker, who has mastered hundreds and hundreds of records and a lot of really important electronic reissues, and they do their own pressings at I think it's called Dub Plate, I think is the pressing plant in Berlin. So all the pressings and the masterings are top rate. Definitely check them out. Keith Fullerton Whitman. And speaking of analog experimental music, this is Yoshiwada with Lament for the Rise and Fall of the Elephantine Crocodile. It's a mouthful. This is a radio station copy of this. Very interestingly on the India Navigation label. From what I can tell, India Navigation had just a couple of drone experimental records that they released in the late 70s, early 80s. This one's from actually from 1982. Of course, most of their catalog is soul jazz and spiritual jazz type stuff. So Yoshi is a Japanese musician, I believe from Osaka originally, moved to New York later in his life. I think he studied under Lamont Young for a while, and the title basically refers to the contraption that he built to do this particular recording. So you can see this contraption is the crocodile, and this is the elephant, I guess, right? And what these are, they're basically he's using sort of giant bags of air that he can control. So they're hooked up to a compressor that pumps in air, and then he can sort of control the tones of the different reed instruments that are attached over here. And so it's a very interesting recording. Side one is actually mostly him doing the vocals. I believe almost exclusively it's just him on vocals. And then side two, it's mostly the these instruments that he created, plus I think the vocals as well. And so I would say side two is maybe more interesting, the one that kind of showcases the different tones that he's creating with this very interesting instrument. Side one is also pretty good. His chanting really doesn't necessarily reference any particular culture or anything. He's mostly I think just testing different frequencies but yeah, fantastic record. I got a really good deal on this, obviously, because the cover's pretty trashed. This has been reissued. Definitely check that out if you like weird drone, if you like to be assaulted by a wall of sound for half an hour. Definitely check that out. And there's a really nice explanation of sort of the theory behind it and why he built those instruments. So there you go. I think that was 5, right? So 5 on a Friday. Hope everybody's well. Thanks for the feedback on the last video, and see you again soon.